This video is designed to familiarize you with rootsTrust's tools, not to be confused with the toolbar. The tools are small apps that can be invoked from the main menu bar, up here, the toolbar that's located on the rootsTrust window just below the menu bar. Here, these are tools, here and here, as well as the menu bar and toolbar of the event detail form. And the toolbar, these are tools here. These are all tools. Not all toolbar buttons invoke tools. For example, the navigation buttons on the main toolbar are not tools. I've already demoed two of the tools on other videos, namely the Roman to Arabic numeral converter on the main menu bar video and the relationship calculator on the toolbar video. So I won't be talking about them again on this video. The event detail form is already visible, so let's take a look at its toolbar. The first button that references a tool is the one with the candles on it, the movable feast date calculator. Your first question will certainly be, what is a movable feast? A movable feast is a date in the Christian church calendar that does not always occur on the same day and month each year, like Palm Sunday and Easter, both of which are movable feasts. These feasts are always on a Sunday. The church records of many European countries in past centuries frequently recorded the dates of baptisms, marriages, and burials, if they occurred on a Sunday, as the number of Sundays after one of some 19 movable feasts. The date expression was almost always in Latin, even in Protestant records, and they were frequently abbreviated on top of that. So the 21st Sunday after the Feast of Trinity could be written one of these three ways. This is the full unabbreviated Latin version. Domenica is the Latin word for Sunday, and then 21 being the 21st Sunday. Post means after, and Trinitatis is the name of the Feast of Trinity. These two abbreviated forms are very common, and you will probably more likely encounter one of these forms rather than the full form. In the record that I'm showing you here, this is the way it was spelled in the original record, which I can show you. Here we have DOM period, 21 period, POST, then TRINIT period. So converting these dates to month, day, and year is no trivial undertaking. Several table lookups are required, and it is very easy to make a mistake. To make things even more difficult, you need to know whether the church whose records you're working with was using the Julian or the Gregorian calendar at the time the particular event occurred. Not all countries converted to the Gregorian calendar at the same time, and not all parishes in a given country converted at the same time. rootsTrust's movable feast conversion tool will handle dates between 1528 and 1851, the span of years for which conversion tables have been published. Here is an event whose date was derived from a movable feast date I found in a Swedish marriage register for 1762. Let's check to see if I did the conversion correctly. So first I enter 21 for the number of Sundays, and then Trinitatis, and then 1762. So now I have to decide between two valid dates. which is not a problem since I know that Sweden had fully converted to the Gregorian calendar by 1740. So this is the proper date, the correct date, which you see I already have in my record for this event. What could I have done had I not been able to determine whether the church was using the Julian or the Gregorian calendar at the time of this event? Well, one, I could have guessed and then entered either of the two dates into the date field on the event form, and then put a note down here indicating what the alternate date could have been. Or two, I could have entered here a date range between October 27th, 1762 and October 31st, 1762. These movable feast dates are by no means rare. I have literally encountered dozens of them in my own personal genealogical research. So that's enough about movable feasts. Let's move on to the next tool, the gravestone calculator. I need to load a different event. Let's look at Carl Edlund's death certificate. Here we see his birth date here as April 6th, 1860. And here's his death certificate. There is his birth date on the death certificate. And over here we find his date of death, March 7th, 1941, and his age at death at 80 years, 11 months, and 30 days. Okay? We'll see whether that's true or not. Well, let's load the gravestone calculator. We see that rootsTrust was kind enough to plug Carl's date of death into the form for me. And I type in the age at death given on the death certificate. And it calculates March the 8th, 1860, which is correct for the data entered here. So the conclusion that I came to, having double-checked and double-checked my calculations, is that the public official who filled out Carl's death certificate made an error in his calculation of age at death. So, jumping over the relationship calculator button, we come to the SoundX code generator button. The SoundX code was developed for the 1900 census by a very clever female employee of the U.S. Census Bureau. It allows names that sound similar but that are spelled differently to be grouped together. You really don't need SoundX codes to use rootsTrust. The program uses them on its own when you perform a surname search without the exact match on surname option being checked. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Here's the name search form, and here's the exact match on surname check. Well, I'm going to uncheck that. So what I'm looking for are people with a surname similar to Smith, and whose forename starts with an H. So here's my result set, and you can see that I got not only Smith, but I got a Smythe down here, and I got a couple of Schmidts, and a Smid, and a couple of Eastern European spellings for Schmidt. So I must point out that some of these names that I've entered in here, as a matter of fact, most of them are bogus. That is, I simply entered them into my database so that I could demonstrate to you how the SoundX works. So let's load the SoundX code generator tool and plug in some of those names and see what happens. So if I type in Smith and click on generate, I get a code S530, which is the standard format for a SoundX code. The first character is always a letter, and it's always the first letter of the surname. The other three characters are always numerals, and there will always be three. So let's change that from Smith to Smythe and hit the generate button again, and we see that there's no change. Now let's put in something totally different. Generate, and it doesn't change. And then we type in the Polish spelling for Schmidt. Still no change. If I type in Jones, it changes. So you see all of those names that came up in that SoundX search that I did on the name Smith all have the same SoundX code. So let's go back to the search form and click the exact match on surname checkbox and redo the search. And you see that we get an exact match on the surname. So we only get people whose surname is Smith, spelled S-M-I-T-H. So the bottom line is that if you should need a SoundX code for a surname for some other application, you can generate it here using this tool. So, skipping over the Roman to Arabic numeral converter, we come to the British regnal date converter. A British regnal date is typically a day and month plus a year number relative to the coronation of the sitting British monarch. This type of date was used in many British legal documents of the 17th and 18th centuries, particularly probate records. In order to convert such dates to conventional dates, you need to know when each monarch was coronated. This information is built into the tool. I have an example that I'd like to show you that is an abstract of a 17th century document that I found. Individual in question here, wielding the sword, was probably an ancestor of mine, but I haven't been able to prove it yet. So here we have the British date here, 15 November 7 James 1. That is a British regnal date. Down here we have another one, 25 November 7 James 1. So let's plug that first one, 15 November 7 James 1, into the tool and see what we get. So we first scroll down and find James the First, and then the year was 7, and we see that the year in question was 1609. So moving right along, we go from England to France of the period following the French Revolution and extending until 1806. During this period in France and its occupied territories, which included parts of present-day Germany, a revolutionary calendar was in effect, the French Republican calendar, which was ultimately discarded due to strong religious objections. It did away with the 7-day week defined in the Bible, and there weren't any more Sundays. There were 12 months of 30 days each, and each month was composed of 3 10-day groupings called decades. 12 times 30 is only 360, so there were 5 feast days at the end of the year, or 6 in leap years, to pad the year out to 365 or 366 days. The year started in late September by conventional reckoning. Manual conversion of these dates to conventional dates is a nightmare. That's what the tool is for. So I need to load a different event. 4890. This example is from a German church record written in Latin. Let me show you the record first. Here it is. Here's the date, 16 Frimaire, and then the Latin baptismal record for this girl, Eugenia Probst. 16 Frimaire. Now, if you look down here, you'll see a new year starting, 1806, in the lower right-hand corner of the window. This is a hybrid date. Rather than a full French Republican date, it's a mixture. The day and the month are French Republican, but the year is Gregorian. Normally, in a real French Republican date, the year would be a Roman numeral relative to year 1, which started on September 22nd of 1792. Thus, year 14, Roman numeral, would be Roman numeral X1V, which would overlap with Gregorian years 1805 and 1806, which is what we have here. You can see that this particular record on 16 Frimaire was right at the end of the year, the Gregorian year, 1805. So with that in mind, let's go and look at the tool here and plug in the values of 16, 16th day of the month. And the month was Frimaire, and the year, this is tricky because the year is Gregorian, but we know that it was toward the end of the year. So this year, year 14, started in September of 1805. And we saw in that church record that this baptism occurred very close to the end of the year 1805. So we'll click that and we see that the date generated is 7 December 1805, which is what I have in my record here. Okay. The next tool is the Hebrew date converter. It and the Islamic, Indian civil, and Persian Jalali date converters all work the same way. So I will only demo this one, Hebrew. I have no example from my own data that I can show you, so I'll enter a Hebrew date that most Americans will recognize after it has been converted. So that would be the 17th of Tammuz, in the year 5536, which is July 4th, 1776. So the last of the date conversion tools is the Quaker date converter. Dates in Quaker documents were often expressed using ordinal numbers for both day and month and a cardinal number for the year, as in first day of the first month, and I'm going to type in the year 1740. So what do you think the result is going to be? January 1st, 1740? If you do, you're wrong. It's March the 1st, 1741. How could that be? In the British Empire prior to 1752, unlike the rest of Europe, the year started on March 25th, the spring equinox, such that the day after March 24th, 1740, was March 25th, 1741. Strange. It confuses me, and I'm sure that it confused people at that time as well. So, through an act of Britain's Parliament, January 1st became the first day of the year starting in 1752. However, the Quakers did not always obey this law, so for Quaker dates starting with 1751 that only identify the month by its number, you cannot be sure which month is meant. In such cases, it is probably wisest to enter the Quaker date into the date field of the event detail form. Let's look at a few Quaker dates. Here's a Quaker ancestor of mine, Brian O'Malley, born in Galway, Ireland. Here is, let's take a look at his will. This is a will transcript. The original is kind of difficult to read. Copy is poor. This is my transcription. This will was made out on the 2nd day, 11th month in the year 1684, which turns out to be January 2nd, 1685, by modern reckoning. Now let's take a look at one of his marriage records for his second marriage. And let's look at the record. Here's the record, and you can see that he was married on the 27th of the 6th month, commonly called August. So there you see the difference, the 2-month difference between their reckoning and normal reckoning. Well, it was everyone's reckoning at that time. Everyone referred to August as the 6th month, but most documents, or Quaker documents, almost never used the month number. So here we have, in this case, there's no ambiguity whatsoever. So I don't have to enter a Quaker date into the record for this particular event, because it is fully identified as the 27th of August. Only the problem is that we have to guess the year because it's not mentioned in this particular record. Please note that of all the calendar and date reckoning types that rootsTrust supports, only the French Republican and the Hebrew varieties are supported by GEDCOM. What does this mean? This means that the other exotic dates will be converted to conventional dates if you export your data to an GEDCOM file. There is, however, a way to avoid this, to keep the exotic dates and remain GEDCOM compliant, namely by expressing them as interpreted dates. For further information about this, watch the video on the Date Wizard or read the Date Wizard's help file. The remaining 3 toolbar buttons are used to invoke operating system apps as opposed to the rootsTrust tools. They're there simply for your convenience. So this one loads the character map, the calculator, and the notepad on Windows. They're slightly different on the other operating systems. It's operating system dependent. So this concludes the rootsTrust tools demo video. Be sure to watch the video on the Date Wizard.